I'm going to show you how to edit eyes in Photoshop using just 3 layers and then create an action so that you can reuse that for all of your other photos. Let's go. All right, guys, so I'm inside of Photoshop and I have this image from Unsplash of a portrait. It's a portrait of a woman here. And so when I zoom in, I got a good view of the eye. It's a really good one to edit. So with just a few steps, we can edit this eye and make it look a little bit better. All right, so go down in the bottom right-hand corner, this little circle with that's kind of half filled. It's an adjustment layer icon. Click on that, go up to curves. We're gonna adjust the curves on this, and I'm going to just kind of bring the middle part of the graph up, whichever you like. I think we're just brightening up the eye is all we're doing. All right, so then I'm going to press Command I, and then I'm going to create another curves adjustment, right? And we are going to click on that, and I'm going to actually change this to overlay blend mode, and then I'm going to bring the top part of this graph over, and I'm going to just kind of really get those highlights to come all the way up, and we're going to really brighten those highlights. Press Command I. And the very last thing we're going to do is click on color fill, solid color, I'm sorry. And we're going to go and change that to, I think, soft light. That's usually the best. And then I'm going to go Command A. So there's a lot of different ways to selecting this. I think when it comes to the initial curves layer, I like to take out my curvature pen tool. So I select P as a hotkey. If you just hover over the pen tool on the left side, click and hold, and then select curvature pen tool. That should get you to that option. And I then create a path around the inside edge of the eye, like this. And the thing with the curvature pen tool, creates this curve automatically for you. If there's parts right here like you want to kind of straighten out, you can just go ahead and double click on one of the vertices here, and that creates a straight edge. Oops, double click. There we go. So you can see it's a straight edge there. And then we can go ahead and just move these vertexes around. And there, you got a path. So then what I do is I can go to the other eye and do the same thing, ×2. And the big thing about this one is to stay inside the iris. I don't want to go outside of this, because what then would happen is the whites of the eyes is going to go ahead and become super overblown out, and I don't want that. So I got those eyes selected, and I'm going to paths, and I'm going to just command click that area. It's going to select that area, and then I'm going to go into my selection tool, W hotkey, or you can just go ahead and click there. That's going to bring up this select and mask option in the info area. And so I'm going to click select and mask, and what that's going to do is going to allow me to do some feather options. I'm just going to go bring the feather up. It's kind of indiscernible, 15 pixels roughly. I don't know, it all depends. I'm going to make sure that the shift edge is a little bit, because once that feather happens, it's going to widen that selection, and I just want to be sure that I don't get any of the whites. We can go ahead and adjust it later on if we need to, but minus 10% to 15% is pretty good. And if you take a look, I can see that adjustment there. All right, so then now that I have my curves mask selected, I have my brush selected, that's B hotkey. I'm going to make my brush larger. I just use the brackets up here in the top right hand side of the keyboard, and I open that up. My opacity on this brush is 0, and if you can see, look at that. So you see how the eye got bright on that. All right, so I do have too big of a feather on that one, but I can go ahead and just invert my mask. I'm sorry, not invert my mask. Take my brush and make sure that I selected X and made that black. And then I'm just going to go underneath there and just brush away the black there. There we go. All right, and then over here on the other side, same thing. Make sure that my brush is white. We're over that, and there we go. All right, so far, so good. So I'm gonna keep that mask, so I'm gonna keep that selection selected, and I'm gonna go to the next mask, the curves layer. And this just keeps all of my edits within that eye. And I'm gonna go ahead and reduce the opacity of my brush to like 20%. And then we're gonna go ahead and edit the highlights. And we're just gonna brush over the highlights of the eye. And actually bring it down to 10%. There we go. All right, so before, after. And you can do the whole eye. I think it's a little unique to kind of just feather in a little bit brighter spots here where it just really accentuates those little details in the eye. All right, and then we can go ahead and go to color fill and do the same thing. Brush is at 0. I'm sorry, it's at 100%. Let's go ahead and just color in there. All right, and then we're almost there. So I'm going to go ahead and Command D. So as you can see, that's way too much. But while the color fill layer is selected, we're going to shift click down to curves. I'm going to press Command G. It's going to create a group, and I'm going to go ahead and turn the opacity of that group down. And see it down at 0, and then we can just go ahead and just bring it up to where we like it. Make that a little bit softer of an edit. All right, so as you can see, there's the before. Let's go ahead and zoom in so you can see before, after. Okay, before and after. Bring that up. And it's a nice way to subtly edit. The one thing that you can do with this then is you can go ahead and, if you don't like that color, we can change this color by double clicking on the fill layer, and we can brighten it up. I like it darker for soft light. It just feels more natural when you change the color. There, and then you get both eyes. Oh, that looks good. I really like that dark orange. That looks neat there. Anyway, now let's bring this up just a little bit. Wow, what a cool look. I think that's also a little bit too bright, but you can go ahead and edit the opacity levels on that. So how do we create that as an action? There's really just only one other way to do that, one other step to add to this, and that is setting up an action folder and pressing record, really, and we just do those same steps over again. So in order to make this automated so that you can run this every time you do a photo, just go over to your actions panel. If you don't have one up, what I'm using right here is the Windows Workspace Essentials, and go ahead and down here, it's the second option down, click on Actions, and that will bring up the Actions panel for you. Mine I set over here inside by my properties because I just like it there, and I rearranged my workspace. So under Actions, on the bottom right hand corner, go ahead and click on the folder. You can create a folder. This is your eye edit folder, or whatever type, name it whatever you want. We're going to go ahead and select the little square box with the plus icon in it and create a new action. And with this action, we're going to just label it eyes bright, and record. So now it is recording. Everything we do now is going to be recorded for our future edits. So the first thing we're going to do is go down here and select the curves adjustment layer. Going to bring this up, and then we're going to rename this curves layer to Brighten. And I'm going to go ahead and select the layer mask, Command I to invert it, and we are going to go ahead and create a new curves adjustment layer. And with this curves adjustment layer, we are going to name this one Highlights, and we are going to take the top right corner, bring it all the way up to the middle area there, and change the blend mode to overlay, and Command I to hide that mask. And then we're going to go ahead and select one more solid color adjustment layer, and just like before, I'm just going to add it as an orange, a dark orange burnt sienna color. We're going to change that layer to soft light. We're going to go ahead and select the mask, Command I to invert it, select the layer, double click it, and call this color. Then for our final step, we're going to select all three of those new layers, Command G to group them, and double click them and call them Bright Eyes. And once that is done, we're going to go back to our actions before we do anything else, and we are going to go ahead and stop the action. Now, that has created the base of all of my edits, and I can go ahead and go in and do the masking. So if I go ahead and just delete that, what's going to happen if I go back and play my eyes bright by selecting that action and pressing play, it's going to create that bright eyes effect. And I can go ahead and start my edits, brush, and we're going to go ahead and I can just make those eyes bright. Highlights, we can go ahead and, oops, that's too bright. I'm going to reduce my brush to 10% and go ahead and kind of make all right. And then with color, brush, we're going to go back to 100% opacity. And I'm just going to color in the eyes there. Cool. And then final effect. All right, so that looks pretty cool. Final effect, I'm going to go ahead and reduce that opacity. And there we have it. Just a nice little effect for Photoshop. Now I can go to my next image, and I can just go ahead and select the Bright Eyes action, press play, there it is, it's already loaded up, and brush 100%, and it brightens up my image. Go to the other eye, brighten it up, stay within my editing area. Could technically brighten up the pupil. I don't like to brighten up the pupil there. And I'm going to actually reduce that. I think that's a little bit too much action there. All right, highlights. We're going to go ahead and reduce the brush opacity to 10%. Adjust those highlights in there. Cool. Works really well for those. And then the color adjustment, I'm going to go ahead and bring my brush back up to 100%. And go ahead and color in. Now, I'm not sure I like the brown for this one. It just doesn't work for this image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and, yeah, I just don't like that. I liked that steely look, so we'll go to blue, kind of bring it down to a steely, cool look. And there you go. I'm going to go and just change this, soften that effect a little bit. And that's the easy way to go about that action. Now, quick bonus tip. All right, if you made it this far, congratulations. I have a little bonus for you. If you want to make this a hotkey, all you have to do is go to your action, double click it, and down here where it says function key, go ahead and go down and select one of the functions. I think my next function is F5. I like to do shift. Do I like to do shift command? Yeah, shift command F5. There we go. Okay. So now that function is set to shift command F5. If I want to, I can go ahead and do control shift command and then F5, and then it will do that as a hotkey. All right, guys, now you can edit eyes inside of Photoshop using your Photoshop action. Edit eyes in Photoshop. Edit eyes in Photoshop. Edit eyes in Photoshop. Now you guys can edit eyes in Photoshop.